Hey, everybody. Welcome to our next guest speaker for MKT365 Esports Marketing. Really excited to have our next guest, Mark Gress, who's a partner of, um, what's the name of the company again?
Prodigy Search.
Prodigy
Rebranded,
Search.
rebranded from Prodigy Sports. So they're
That's Prodigy Search. My brain right now is in New Orleans. My physical body is at the airport. I'm sorry, Mark. Mark Gress, who's a partner at Prodigy Search. We've had him in here before, and I love having him speak to this class in particular because he has a lot of great examples and projects that he's worked on in the esports space. Also, can be just a great resource for you guys as you sort of start to look at what are next steps in your career after graduation and after St. Joe's. So, welcome, Mark. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. We were brainstorming a lot over the years when we do this, when you invite me to do this. And I think when esports was hot and heavy over the last prior years, it was an easier conversation. It was a more comfortable conversation because esports was healthy and thriving and doing well. And by the way, it's not unhealthy, it's just in an awkward spot, and I'll get to that. But I also know where I've changed my presentation a little bit is what you and I talked about, which is not everybody in this class wants to have a career in esports. I think there might be people that they like your class, they like the elective, maybe they play video games, maybe they played video games when they were a kid, but they're unsure whether that's a career path for them. So part of the presentation is esports related, and if you guys have a few other esports guest speakers about the term that JP and I brainstormed on, they can give you like the nitty gritty, the day to day. I'll give you a more broad presentation today. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sports technology by way of career paths, and then just general career stuff too. So, but I'll start with the esports stuff if that's okay. I have a unique setup on my home office here. So let me know if this screen share works. I want to make sure you can all see this presentation. We good on that? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So
we're
I'm going to
good.
be clicking around a lot on a few different slides. So I won't go through every single slide. I don't present that way. And I have a few other, so if you see me clicking or taking PDFs off the screen, it's just because I want to show you more rather than less. So if anybody has any audio or visual problems throughout, just let me know. So 17 years ago, just by way of background, so 17 years ago, Prodigy Search was founded. We're an executive recruiting firm. So what does that mean? Better described, we're headhunters, right? So we're headhunters in the sports industry and entertainment industry. And generally speaking, what we focus on is mid-level executives up to the senior level, right? So directors, vice presidents, and CEOs, CMOs. And we never recruit. We always get asked this. We never recruit players. We never recruit coaches. Maybe we should. There's probably a lot of money in that, but we focus on the business side of sports and entertainment. So that's the kind of best way to describe what we do. Our clientele, when I first started at Prodigy 10 years ago, and it still burns me to this day. I walk in the office and it's still I could describe the office to a T. The first jersey you see is a Yankees jersey, then there's a Lakers jersey or Lakers ball, and then a Cowboys jersey. Those were our first three clients. Were the Yankees, Lakers, and Cowboys, which just burns me to my core. But until I get Philadelphia sports teams as my clients, I can't complain. So only the Union I've worked with very recently. The other teams I've worked with years ago. But our clientele has also changed. And I love this slide for one reason when I do these guest speaking things, because this isn't a sales pitch about Prodigy, but this is a career pitch I'm going to make to you right now, which is I love that we do searches right now that have nothing to do with the 4 or 5 major sports leagues. And therefore, as a career path, yes, esports is an option. But I also think about groups like this considering, yeah, minor league sports and college sports make sense. But why not motorsports? Why not groups like Fanatics? Why not sports gambling, sports betting, venue operators like Oakview Group, right? Oakview Group runs and manages a lot of arenas, ballparks, and stadiums. Sport nonprofits like Tiger Woods Foundation, they've rebranded, but Tiger Woods Foundation, why not sport nonprofits? Recently, JP and I were texting about this. We just placed the president and CEO for Pop Warner Football, right? So these are clients of ours that initially I wouldn't have thought about are sports recruiting clients of ours, right? Because they're not in, the NFL or NBA or whatever. We thrive just as much on the kind of the outskirts of professional sports. So I like doing searches for pickleball. I like doing searches for the Olympic governing bodies. Like those are fun searches to do. just as much as they are the big four, big five leagues. So again, esports, there's probably a few of them in there. I think Monumental is an esports one. Gen G is an esports one. So I'll get to those examples in a minute. But just a potential career path for you in those areas.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark. Not to cut you off, but
Yeah,
you hit. I want to ask you a quick question
yeah,
on
fire
that.
away.
The Pop Warner. Obviously, we know Steve
Yeah,
Strawbridge pretty well.
yeah.
Um, Having worked at the Eagles with him, what was sort of the deciding factor there with him? I mean, he had obviously a merchandise background, but what
Yeah.
were they looking for in a candidate? And I guess he had been getting involved more at the Hall of Fame, which more
Yeah.
maybe probably better positioned him for that type of role.
Yeah, for a number of years, so the gentleman we placed is Steve Strawbridge for the class, and for a number of years he worked at the Eagles. I don't know how long. I should have his resume memorized by now, but did all the merchandising for the Eagles, and then left to go work for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Ohio. And for the last number of years, he was kind of a de facto like chief operating officer or chief administrative officer, and so he had all these business lines that reported up to him. So he had, finance and HR and accounting and sales and market, like merchandise actually did report up to him. So he had all these other business lines reporting up to him. Um, the easy answer to your question is what they liked most about him. We submitted just a ton of candidates for this job because there's a lot of interest. And he was competing against people that had played pro football and high school, college football. He competed against people that run Olympic governing bodies during the interview process, but they loved Steve's deep football knowledge and the fact that his personality wasn't like this hardcore sales guy, this hardcore marketing guy. Like he kind of could do a little bit, right? Like they're a small nonprofit, less than 10 employees. They needed somebody that was like diverse enough of a background to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
You'll
that's good
find
for him.
that, but you'll find that in some of our searches actually. And I wonder if I have them pulled up here. So let me actually go through this because again, I don't want to go through every
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
slide, but
Good,
I'll
do
give
your
you an
thing.
example. So if you see this slide, I'm looking to my right where my screen is. You guys can see it says esports search success, right? Is that one you guys see?
Yep.
All right. So the two examples on this slide that I like telling about, the one on the left is Grant. So Grant was hired by Ted Leonsis, Zach Leonsis, the people that own all of the Monumental sports teams there down there in DC. And Grant's past background and his future, experiences, because I'm going to recruit him away from his current job, and I'll tell you where he is right now. But I'm going to recruit him away from his current job and put him somewhere that has nothing to do with esports. In fact, he felt like he got a good esports foundation. He wants to do something else now. So there's an example of somebody that had a lot of esports and gaming and they were passionate about it, which does help. And I'll get to that advice that he gave me in a bit. And then the far right one is Jordan Sherman. So I placed Jordan twice. Jordan worked at Major League Baseball, the league office, and focused on their advanced media department for a number of years. And I placed him at the LA Clippers. And then we placed him again at Gen G. So there's a guy who worked in baseball and basketball, and all of a sudden he was like, I love playing video games. I'm intrigued by where the industry is going. He was intrigued by the business, by the way. It wasn't just like I like going, when I get home at the end of a hard day's work, I'll have a drink and I'll play video games. No, like he thought the business idea behind what Gen G was going through was incredibly fascinating. So Jordan was a traditional sports guy. And by the way, I'm going to replace Jordan again down the road in a traditional sports job. He just happened to have a nice career period where he was working in esports. So like that Strawbridge example, same one, like a merch guy from, like if I had called Steve Strawbridge when he worked at the Eagles doing merchandise, he's not qualified to run Pop Warner, right? And so like
Right.
there's a guy where, as career evolution would have it, it kind of worked out. Um, Let me see. I want to jump around to. All right. So where the heck did Prodigy come from on this, right? So before COVID, so we kind of got lucky with it, a year or a year and a half before that, and we jumped into esports before COVID hit. And that COVID is when esports really actually exploded big time because people were home playing video games all the time, right? Around the globe, esports has always done really well in other countries. It's much more advanced than it is here, but I would tell you in the U.S. and in the Americas, right before COVID is where it thrived. And there's I can send you this interview I did with this guy, Brett Diamond. I'm not sure if you see it. So this guy, Brett Diamond, worked for the Vikings for a number of years, worked for, I think, one of the league offices, the NFL league office in New York City. And the owners, the Wilf family, said, hey, we're starting an esports. By the way, it's called Rocker. I didn't know what the hell ROKKR was, by the way, but it is called Minnesota Rocker. The Wilf family was like, hey, Brett, do you want to run our esports franchise? And he was like, yeah, sure. Like it was a risk, by the way, but the interview, I'll send you this presentation if you want. I did this
Yep.
interview with Brett. It's like awesome. He's it's a really good chat that he had. All right, I'm gonna take a break before I pull up some of these job descriptions. Anybody have any questions about some of those slides? All right, I'm gonna go to job descriptions because I like to show you real world stuff. So the first search we did in esports was for the 2K League, right? And it's not Overwatch, it's not any of the fighting games, first person shooters. Like I get it. It's not the game my son plays and he yells a bunch of weird crap with the headphones on at his friends. And but NBA 2K was something I knew, right? Something I was familiar with. And I tried to explain it to my 65-year-old boss at the time. Hey, we got to get into esports recruiting. And he didn't know what the heck that meant. I said, well, when I was in college and I went to the same school JP did, there was actually Madden's always been big, but there was a Madden competition on campus. And there were people that gathered around this huge open space in a dorm room, like 100 people gathered around to watch like 3 or 4 different gaming systems of people playing Madden. I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world, but then I was the one playing it and then I was the one watching it too. So, and we played for prizes. So I explained to my boss, I said, look, FIFA, you get soccer, right? NBA 2K, you get basketball. I said, imagine people going either online on Discord or YouTube or whatever other, streaming platforms there are, or in person going to an arena, whether it's 5,000 or 20,000 people, and watching people play video games. He goes, does that really happen? I said, yes, it really happens. And there's big business there. So let us place people there, right? 2K League was just kicking off, so we worked with them and helped them place people that were really running the NBA 2K League. The guy who ran it overall was a guy named Brendan Donahue. Brendan Donahue worked under the commissioner at the NBA League office, and about whatever that was 6 or so years ago, they said, "Hey, Brendan, do you want to leave your job at the league office and run our esports league?" And believe me, he had some unique conversations with me and our leaders at Prodigy going, "Is this career suicide for me to get into esports?" But nonetheless, he then hired us to help us establish their league. So a couple of other examples here. This is where what you'll find in traditional sports and entertainment, in particularly in the U.S., is these owners usually own other stuff, right? And esports is something that they were like, again, same thing with the crafts up in New England. But this guy, Mark Ein, who's now a part owner of the Commanders down in DC, owns a tennis team, a tennis tournament, a newspaper. And all of a sudden, out left field, he's like, hey, I want to own and run an esports franchise. So we worked with him on a role in sponsorship sales and then also a role in creative design. So it was graphic design, web, print, digital, you name it. And I show you those 2 job descriptions to illustrate one point. Every business job that exists at the Philadelphia Eagles or your parents' job doing whatever they do exists in esports too, right? So sales, marketing, sponsorship sales, creative director, finance, like those jobs all exist in every other facet, right? I try to explain that to all people all the time about sports business. The same jobs that exist in our world exist everywhere else. We just put the word sport in front of it, right? Not brain surgery here. Couple of other examples. Monumental, I mentioned this one on a prior slide. So the people that own the Wizards, the Capitals, the arena down there, the Mystics, same thing. Ted and Zach Leonsis, the dad and son, said, let's create an esports franchise and let's have it be. And that's where we actually placed that guy, Grant, who I showed you on a prior slide. And he really developed it from scratch. So he was like the CEO. Like that title isn't even director of team operations. That's kind of a BS. Like he really ran it. He really ran the esports franchise down there. Last example before I jump off to a completely different topic. This is a cool one I wouldn't have thought about us doing, right? So Sport5 is a global sports marketing agency based out of Germany. And traditionally, what they do, among other things, is they represent athletes. So a lot of golfers, a lot of tennis players, they represent them and they sell their sponsorship and marketing rights. What we used to call NIL back in the day, but I can't get down that path, dear Lord. But what Sport5 also does is jersey patches, right? They do naming rights deals, and they called us and said, "Hey, we have this esports department. We need somebody that's going to do business development, right? Generate revenue for esports. So any esports players or events or leagues that they own and operate, they needed somebody to kind of sell, right? So working with publishers and leagues and teams and some of their marquee jewel events. So I wanted to show those job descriptions just to say, like, there's jobs out there, even if you're like not into game, like, but you think that as a business model, it makes a ton of sense. I think I could send these job descriptions out afterwards. If you want to read through them, maybe a bullet point sticks out. And you're like, wow, I could do that. Like I could pitch esports to a brand, right? Or it's a career path option for you, even if they don't want to work for 30 years in esports. So again, I'm going to take one more break before I pull up an infamous slide that's 100 years old. But you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Have you shown this one to them before?
I haven't shown this class, but we've looked at
Okay.
this. This is always a great slide to kind of look at
All
the
right.
different ecosystems.
All right. I'll take a break before I go into that slide then. So what do
Yeah.
we, anything from those job descriptions that stood out or that people have questions about?
Well, Mark, what I have a question for you, because we had Rob Johnson with us last week,
Great.
and Rob was great. I mean, he's got a really interesting background.
Yep.
Coming from traditional sports and going
Yep.
into gaming, and now looking at sort of almost a venture capitalist. And he kind of talked about with the students last week about the idea that what's happening in esports is that it's getting aged out.
Yep.
So people that were gamers and interested in watching and consuming content in their teens and 20s, when they get that life cycle changes,
Yep.
they're not. Whereas in traditional sports, you sort of build that equity. In esports, it's almost just like you've got a small window to capture eyeballs,
Yep.
and then you've got to find a new fan. So you never. So is that really one of the
Yeah.
fundamental issues that we're dealing with now in
Yeah.
in esports?
I think that's one, and I'll come back to that and say I think it grew too fast. I think people jumped on it too quickly. They saw it was like the typical 2020 stuff, right? So what did well during the pandemic? Sports betting did, Pelotons, exercise equipment, right? And esports did really well. Golf did really well. So I think it just kind of grew too fast, and the wrong people were kind of getting involved. But Rob's spot, and I just spoke with Rob yesterday as well. So that's funny. One of the things that you said there, I think is absolutely true. It reminds me of the X Games. For at a certain point, you're not going to be able to, be an extreme skateboarder. Like the X Games
Right.
was for a while before, even like early stages before ESPN picked it up, like people that when it became a little more professional, which is what esports should or needs to do, or you need more Rob Johnsons, you need more JPs to be involved in something like that where there's not a lot of adults in the room. Like X Games was at that point where X Games was doing really well. They still needed they needed to get on ESPN. They needed like sponsors. They needed ticket sales revenue, merchandise revenue, and like I remember this conversation going on because it's the same thing with esports is you started to bring in business professionals, and you were being called a sellout, right? Because it was, the X Games was, and just like esports, like, we got here, we got the energy drink companies to partner with us already. Why do we need you? Well, because this is going to fail eventually. Like it's not, the bubble's going to burst. People are going to stop watching it on the streaming platforms. Like you hit the nail on the head, or people are going to age out of it, right? Again, you can't ride a skateboard in your 50s and be on ESPN. Like eventually that gets old. Like nobody's going to watch it, or
Right.
participate in that. So Rob's 1000% true. I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this picture, which by the way, the picture's dated, and I forget what year this was from. So just take this picture with a grain of salt a little bit. I had asked somebody, one of my friends, I said this was like 2022. I was doing a presentation. It might have been even before your class, but and I said, I think people don't understand the landscape of esports. That's part one. Part two, people don't think about the career paths in sports, right? So I think it's a roadmap to like, well, who's doing what, where do I go, where do I start, right? And so if you don't know what the word publisher means, well, there you go. You need some examples of who's publishing the games. Like people know EA Sports because EA Sports publishes games. Like I knew that. Like I'm an old head, but I knew EA was a publisher of games. But then you gotta need to know who's running leagues, who's running events, who's running the competitions for prize money. And then you need to know the individual teams that are on it. So it's not that different than what we do in professional sports, right? There's a league office, there's teams, there's owners, right? I mean, and so the parallels are there, but when you start, saying to old heads like me, ESL and Overwatch, and like it's just words that don't mean anything to us. But then you break it down, you're like, it's just like traditional sports. You have fans, you have sponsors, you have live events, you have competitions, and then it's where the heck do you watch it? So in theory, the idea of Twitch and Discord and YouTube, like they're all going to do regular sports now. Is it all regular sports are going to Netflix and Amazon Prime anyway? It's not like you just watch them on Fox or CBS. So like I show this slide to show it's the same crap we're dealing with in pro sports for 100 years. Like there's no different. You just need to wrap your head around where's the money coming from, where's the money going, and then just again the key players as potential job opportunities. Like that's my mind. Like these all Activision Blizzard, potential client of mine. EA Sports, potential client. Overwatch League, these are all these groups are potential clients of mine in theory. And I'd love to place people in those jobs like that. I think it's just the ecosystem or whatever you want to call this of what what esports is all about. I think this slide it's just a cool way to think about it. That's all.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Ready for the oh, I got one more thing, except for the non-seamless transition. Has anybody ever heard of CSMG? Because I didn't know about them until like 2, 3 years ago, by the way. They apparently run some of the largest college competitions, and you got to check this site out. What they do, the type number of like look at this, they have 385 schools. Like they have a lot of the best esports. I can't call it. Can I call them athletes? I can't. I can't call them athletes. Esports players. I can't. I edit this website. They're not athletes. I'm sorry. But they hold major esports competitions around the country. So this CSMG is the name of the company, but they run these esports competitions, and I just think it's awesome. I kind of went through their website. We're partnering with them on some other college stuff, but I didn't know they did esports. Truthfully, I was like, oh, you guys do this thing. Like I mean, I didn't know this actually went on, but apparently a lot of major colleges participate in this competition for esports. And I think their upcoming event is it's in Texas, wherever the heck I saw that. But look at this company. I just think it's a fascinating group that does a major university higher education esports competition. So
Yeah.
CSMG, check them out.
Okay. Yeah, it's great.
All right, here's my odd twist in this. I mentioned at the very beginning. I also so esports aside, I think we're in the same ballpark here when I talk about sports technology as a career path or as a growth area. And I'm just going to give you a few examples now because I know a lot of these well, and a lot of them are current clients or past clients of ours. So it's more of the idea of esports. It's not that it's leveled off. I don't think it's completely going downhill. It just needs, as Rob said, it needs kind of a little bit of a refresher, and it needs people to push to push it a little bit to go to those pre 20 yeah 2019 2020 2021 esports was like kicking ass. Now I don't know if it's so much. So sports technology, however, is on the rise, right? And so do we as a class, have we talked about COSM, or do some people know about COSM? I know you do, JP, but do others in the class know about this organization?
No, we haven't talked about it yet.
All right. So COSM has a location in LA and Dallas. They're opening up locations in Atlanta and in Detroit actually next year. So COSM, you go to their event, and it's like IMAX, or it's like something where the screen is, and the experience and the noise and the technology, it makes you feel like you're there. If you go on this website and you explore it, you're gonna go, Mark, what the hell are you talking about, right? So I wish I could. I actually want to show you the business model behind this, right? So this Sunday
Well,
you go.
it's got to be like a sphere. It looks like almost like a sphere.
It's an indoor version of a sphere, right? I mean, so you're going there, you're watching a live event, high-end food and beverage. I bet you wouldn't imagine that you could spend $600 on a ticket to this indoor facility to watch an event that you're not in New Orleans, you're in LA watching a Super Bowl. And it just it's unbelievable. I mean, it's a movie theater, right? It's exactly what you said, JP. It's part sphere, part movie theater. So you go in there and you watch this live event, and it's like you're actually at the game. It's out of bounds. So again, COSM's an organization where you're like, okay, sports technology, that's where we're going. I hope we've been watching this maybe periodically during the week. Do we know TGL, Tiger Woods Company? So Tiger and Rory put this company together. It's called TMRW. And down in Florida, they have this venue, which is, again, it's a simulator, yes. And I'm going to get to another simulator example in a second, but they're on TV every week. It's incredibly entertaining. They're all mic'd up. There's a shot clock. I mean, it's a pretty cool setup. All Tiger. I mean, look, Tiger's brand allows you to do that, but it's unbelievable how early the success has been. The numbers have been pretty high, all things considered. Golf's crazy right now, like PGA Tour, Live Golf, like they're crazy. This actually is a nice alternative to it. And again, the guys are having fun. There's a crowd there, kind of in this like elevated little pavilion area. The rules are a little bit crazy. They get to drop the hammer. I mean, it's kind of funny to watch it go. So TGL, another company to keep an eye on. All right, Golf Zone. They are a client of ours, and they're a golf simulator company that's based out of Korea, but they're here in the U.S. So They have golf simulators that they take to bars and restaurants, large facilities where they can fit a bunch of these simulators. So couple of cool things that they have. If you just saw that little drop down there, they have when the ball goes in the simulator, if it lands in the bunker, it lands actually in a bunker, in like kind of their version of a bunker, or the rough, or on the green. If you go on Twitter, I didn't find the video. I was looking for it before, but I didn't want to disrupt the presentation. There's a video of the same idea of a golf simulator. You're hitting it into a screen, right? So you hit your shot with the iron, and it lands in a bunker or on the green. The screen actually moves, like literally the wall rotates, and you go to an actual physical green, and you make your putt, and then the screen rotates back around, and you hit back into the screen again, right? So imagine the wall literally moving, and then you actually have to hit out of a sand, like a real sandy bunker, or putt on a real green. Like the wall literally moves, and then moves back over for your next hole. It's unbelievable. Like the technology for these people is just, it's crazy what they're creating. But so a couple of other examples just to keep it brief, because I think this is of course, this is where the industry is going, is performance technology. So the things you wear on your wrist, or monitoring devices to see how you're training. Like that's another area of sports technology that people aren't really always thinking about. Again, I think the ability to leverage relationships with pro teams and college teams who all want to perform better. So things you're wearing around on your chest, things you're wearing on your wrist, or just how you're being monitored in terms of health. Those are two final ones I was going to show you. And then, as if you didn't need a competitor to Topgolf, apparently there's a thing called home run dugout, and there's a basketball version of this too. I keep on calling it like the basketball version of Topgolf. I'm not sure why you need all Topgolf versions of these, but it's pretty cool to see where technology is taking some of these other sporting opportunities, and you're hitting into a screen in a lot of cases. As you see, it looks a little bit like Wii. Like if for any of you guys who play video games, Wii, like you used to be able to hit home runs into your TV screen, but just a kind of a cool set of examples that aren't esports, but we're utilizing sports technology. So I thought I would just throw a few other kind of goofy nuggets out there at you all.
Yeah, no, these are all great examples. And we started talking a little bit about the idea of sort of a third home, and that concept now of the idea that this younger generation of 18 to 24-year-olds are looking for a third place to be at outside
Yep.
of work and in their house, and the trends are showing that they're not out going to bars and like previous generations. So
Yep.
these experiential areas seem to be logical choices, and the problem start to become is can they be profitable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they're not selling alcohol, they're
Yeah.
selling just
Yeah.
memberships, or a round of golf or whatever it is at
Yeah.
a top. So how do you monetize it in a way that can be profitable, especially when you have to be in major cities with
Yeah.
they're very expensive. The space that you need is expensive.
You're absolutely right. And the one to your point, the ones that are selling the food and beverage, they're making out like kings. Like the Cosm does well because Cosm just sells you a ticket.
Okay.
And look, Top Golf. I think about this in the context of Top Golf too. Like I'll take my son there, and like $50 for a bay for an hour is not the end of the world. But then they start charging for food and beverage, and all of a sudden I'm $150 in, right? And so it's kind of a unique. It is a unique scenario, right? The ones that aren't, you're not going there to drink, you're just going there to play. You're like, all right, how much do I charge this person to go shoot? To shoot hoops or hit baseballs into a screen, or again, the golf simulator example, right? I mean, you don't need to go to Golf Zone and get hammered, but if I can't eat some chicken fingers and drink a beer, what's Golf Zone's profit margin? And so, like I said, Golf Zone, that's a unique example where those simulators can be put into a larger bar or a Dave and Buster's or something like that. And you're like, all right,
Right.
put two or three these simulators, next to each other, and then I'll go eat in the restaurant. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, how do you make money these places? Because and Topgolf, by the way, as a company, is struggling right now. And Callaway, who bought them, is like, yeah, you guys need to make more money, figure it out. And so Topgolf tried to sell sponsorships, right? They integrate Angry Birds, right? I mean, Topgolf needs to evolve because even the average golfer, or the person that doesn't golf at all, they'll go there. Like the guy that's like a 5 handicap is like, yeah, I can just go to the drive range for $10, not 50, And so it's a great you make a great point.
Right. Well, Mark, we got about 15 minutes left, so I'd like to at least give some time to open up some questions, and then we'll kind of wrap some things up quickly. So, anybody have a question for Mark? Anything you want to know about esports, job search, traditional sports? This is the guy to talk to. So, what do you got? Don't be shy.
See, that 8 a.m. class we used to have, people would be at least tired. There's no excuses at 11:48.
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Touched
for
on
it.
this a little bit earlier, but like if we were ever interested in going into esports, like where do you suggest starting? I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned something earlier, but like where do you suggest starting like often?
Yeah, so a couple of, I want to tell you a couple of the pieces of feedback that people gave me when I had asked them the question. So Grant, Jordan, some of the people you saw in the prior slides, I said, how do people build up kind of esports credentials on their resume, right? Their LinkedIn, like what do they do? So I'm going to read off some notes I have for me. They said join a local esports club, start a Discord channel, host mini tournaments on campus. They said volunteer. They said do more than just being a fan or being a player. So starting a club, running events on the side, follow these people on Twitter, interact with them on Twitter, see if any of the people on Twitter will do an informational interview with you. They likely will, by the way, or LinkedIn. So if you follow these esports people on probably one of those two channels, see what they're talking about, see what they're doing, and hey, would you be willing to speak with me for 5 or 10 minutes so I can learn more about your career in esports? Play the student card as long as you can, Max. Right, so. If I ever have a student that wants to reach out to me about anything sports or sports entertainment related or recruiting, I'll take the call. I'm never because I play the student angle works for me. I'm hook, line, and sinker on the student angle. I'll help anybody out. But I would tell you to start to build your resume up with anything esports related that doesn't even have anything to do with a job, right? So the fact that you took this class, any projects, volunteer work, if you hear about any esports events or conferences, and if you can say, hey, can I go, like try to go to them for free or volunteer at them, just to kind of have those nuggets on your resume, I would say don't minimize anything esports related. Again, starting, I guess the one example that the person gave me, start a Discord channel or be a moderator for some sort of streamer. Like those were examples that people that are doing esports stuff told me to tell students. Like I asked them, and those were the examples they gave me.
Jared, yeah, good. That's a good question, Max. Jared.
Mark, how you doing? Jared by day, Grizzly by night. Thank you for being here with us today. Wanted to ask, this week we learned about the top 3 stakeholders of the esports industry. So seeing as you're in the esports industry, I'd like to know between players, coaches, tournament league organizers, fans, who, in your opinion, plays a very pivotal role in carrying the industry?
Yeah, I mean, look, you're the conversation that JP mentioned with Rob, I think is spot on, is if the fans do not continue to stream or come to the events or buy the merchandise or buy the video games, if the fans aren't engaged in it, that probably more important than anything else, right? And then it's that because I think that same thing goes on in any other league that has been defunct that didn't work out, right? So Jared, here's my thought, right? So spring football has always been a big challenge, right? And spring football always fails because fans aren't going to the games, aren't buying the tickets, the merchandise, the food and beverage. They're not watching it, etc. So I think I always just I always go to the fans. And again, if it's not doesn't need to be ticket buyers, like I'm cool with that. Like I talk about it in the context of women's sports too. Women's sports can thrive even if people aren't buying tickets to the games, but they're buying the merchandise. They're spending the money in anything and everything else related to women's sports, but they can't go to every single game. No big deal. Still spend your money. If you're a sponsor the WNBA franchise, even if you can't go to every game, and then buy their merch, right? Follow them all on the social media channels. So if fans aren't doing stuff with any team or league, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. The private equity and all the money, the owners are going to go, wait, I'm losing money on this. I'm out. Like, again, I mentioned, like, the guy who owns the Patriots, if he's losing money on his esports franchise, he's going to, yeah, I'm good. I'm out. I don't want to do that anymore. It's not fun anymore. I'm not making any money on it. So fans.
Yeah, it's a good question. And again, we debate that in class in terms
Yeah.
of, who's got the power or who's got
Yeah.
the leverage, and is it the game developers? Is it the tournaments? Is it the players?
Yeah.
That's the one challenge. There's really no governing body
Yeah,
that's
there's
consistent.
an argument to be made for all of them. There's 100% an argument to be made for all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that was a good question, Jared. Anybody else? Okay. Mark, I got a question. So what should, what would you say is sort of best practices now when you're looking at sort of, students that are getting ready to graduate, looking to go out in the job market, what sort of, just generally speaking, not necessarily esports
Yeah.
or sports, what are sort of some of best practices that you believe in, to put them in a better spot to, get noticed, get an interview, get hired?
Yeah, February, so we're kind of in a unique, I thought about your question in the context of like where we're at timing wise, and I think February before May graduation is not that all you're graduating in May, maybe some of you graduating different times, but I think this time of the year is unique, right? So February is either the time to be starting to prepare to apply for jobs or starting to prepare to apply for internships. Now, you're going to get hired for those internships or jobs right now, February, before that timeline hits. I'm not 100% sure. I've heard some people have come back to me and going, well, they posted a job right now. They said they'd keep my resume on file. They really like me, but they can't hire me and wait for me to graduate, right? So there's always that like kind of angle to put people in the best position. So I am a big proponent of LinkedIn. So your LinkedIn needs to mirror your resume. It needs to be updated. It needs to be on LinkedIn. You need to be active on there. Building that network so that people know who the heck you are is also a good thing. And you can start with your professors. You can start with me. Start with each other. But building that network is critical. I always like to tell students to be open to two different things: different geographies and different types of areas of sports and entertainment. Now, the first one, the geography thing, is I'm a little bit hypocritical here. And arguably, you and I might never leave the Philadelphia area, right? So, but if you're asking me what has the most success, it's people that are willing to leave the area and you can always come back, right? The Bon Jovi song, you can always return home here. But if you leave the Philadelphia area, which is very congested, and even some other major cities where there's prominent universities and sport management programs. Like, think about how many schools we have in this area. It's obscene. Like, it's more than a lot of other major cities. But your willingness to say, you know what, I can go to Ponte Vedra to work for the PGA Tour, and I can be there for 3 years, and I'll come back to Philly and spend the rest of my life in Philly, right? So the willingness geographically to explore different areas and then come back here. That's one. The other piece of advice I always give is being open to other areas of our industry that you wouldn't have thought. I always wanted to work in the Big Five. Like, I always thought, like, hey, my career is in the pro sports leagues. That's what I wanted to do. I actually have regrets that I never worked in minor league sports. I would have loved to have that be a career path for a period of my time. I would think I would have learned a lot. But all those examples I gave you on that one tab, like, there's food and beverage companies. You can work for Delaware North and Aramark or Sodexo. There's people that operate venues. You can work for one of those companies. One of them is based in Conshohocken, right? ASM, although they're now all over the world. Being open to other areas of sports and entertainment, including music. So companies like Live Nation, being open to companies like Cosm or Golf Zone or any of the other ones I showed you on there. So I think the willingness to go, look, eventually I want to work in the Big Five. I don't have to work in the Big Five today.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I think, I think the common theme that we've sort of, the guest speakers that we've brought in so far this semester is that you could potentially start out in esports,
Yep.
get some transferable skills
100%.
and take that to, if your goal is always to eventually get into one of the big four leagues or,
Yep.
some sort, you need to get experience, and that sort of takes the priority. And there's a lot of different ways you can get really good experience that can transfer into a different property.
I agree 100%. It's all about transferable skills. I don't care what people work and pull them from and put them into when I recruit. So I agree.
Yeah. Okay. We're kind of butted up against it. Mark, again, we appreciate your time here. If the students want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. Say I was in that esports class. I'll accept it. All of my email, my phone, everything's on there. You can email me, jump on a call with me, just shoot me notes on LinkedIn, send me a resume, whatever. Just LinkedIn's the easiest way. Just look up Mark Gress Jr. on LinkedIn, and and also JP, I'll send you the presentations and the attachments. If anybody wants them, it's fine. Again, it's words on paper. You might not. I don't need you to give you guys extra homework, but if there's anything from that document that's helpful, cool, you got it, and you're like, oh, that was a cool job description I saw or whatever. So.
All right. Well, what are your predictions for Sunday?
Oh gosh, I'm nervous about it. I'm hoping for like a 10-point win, so I don't have to sweat it out at the end. But there's a lot of people not pulling for our birds right now. So I'll say 10-point win. I don't got a score for you with 10 points. How's that sound?
Yeah, I got a good feeling here. I wouldn't have been flying here to New Orleans if I didn't think we were going to win. So I think we're going to.
Hey, I already told my boss. I said, look, Monday morning staff meeting. I said, don't expect a lot out of me at 9 a.m. on Monday. So.
Yeah. Well, this professor already put Monday's class as virtual. So
Good, wise man.
yeah, I should get some extra. I should get some props for that because I know not all the professors have done this, and I don't know why. But anyway, all right, Mark. Well, again, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. It was good catching up with you, and then I'll be in touch. So
All
thank
right,
you guys.
have a good game, everybody. Have a good weekend. Thank you for having me.